5 sinister true stories exposed this summer. Spine-chilling encounters with the haunted and cursed. Karen's first night shift at the convenience store felt like the beginning of a nightmare. In the hollow silence of Willow Creek, the flickering lights illuminated the aisles, casting eerie shadows that danced like dark phantoms. This wasn't just a job, it felt like a descent into hell. The air was thick with an unsettling presence, something that sent shivers down her spine. Little did she know, this night would unravel dark secrets. At first, it was simple: the sound of a soda can rolling across the floor, stopping ominously at her feet. She glanced around, heart racing, but the only witness was the blinking neon sign outside. Every mundane task was laced with fear. The whispers of her children echoed in her mind, questioning who would protect them while she faced this unseen terror. Goosebumps prickled her skin as she shuffled through the store, nervous and on edge, eyes darting across the rows of chips and candy. As the hours crawled by, the unease thickened. A dropped packet of gum whispered as it slid to the ground, yet no one was there. Karen felt the knot tightening in her stomach, a gnawing panic. When the lights flickered again, she caught sight of something out of the corner of her eye, an indistinct shadow at the end of the aisle. The chill of dread wrapped around her. She wasn't just alone, and that realization churned her stomach. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The atmosphere felt charged, like electricity before a storm. Each time someone entered the store, tension surged. Were they strangers or allies in her fight against a supernatural evil? As she caught a glimpse of a familiar face from the neighborhood, she felt a flicker of safety. But the following morning, as she returned home, the feeling twisted into dread. The kettle was on but cold. The furniture was slightly askew, every detail off enough to send her spiraling. Then, the children. Mia woke up with tears streaming down her face, whispering about a tall shadow peering through her window. Jake, normally spirited, had turned quiet, restless, and withdrawn. The fear permeated their home, their laughter fading like distant ghosts. The neighbors no longer waved, whispers chased them down the street, eyes narrowing in suspicion. One haunted evening, Jake discovered an old box in the attic, ancient dust flying like linens of a forgotten era. Within it, a tarnished locket, its weight heavy with secrets. As he clasped it in his hand, something shifted in the air, an unsettling tension spiraled through the house. Jake's demeanor morphed overnight, dark moods unfurling like storm clouds, while Mia began to speak of the friend visiting her in the lonely night. With each strange occurrence, anxiety wrapped itself tightly around Karen, keeping her awake at night, with shadows creeping closer. The children were becoming unrecognizable, and as fear twisted its grip on their everyday life, she realized the danger lied deeper than she thought. It wasn't just the curse binding them, it was the ever-watchful eyes of neighbors she once called friends. One lonely night in the store, Karen faced the looming shadow at last, anxiety clawing at her throat. It beckoned her towards the door, a sickly sweet invitation that sent her heart racing. Did it watch her, or was it compelling her to step closer? The truth crashed down on her, a desperate race against time to save her family before they slipped away forever into the darkness. Her instincts screamed that the danger lurking was far more sinister than she ever imagined, tightening the noose of dread and urgency that left no room for escape. The final push to uncover the truth had begun, plunging her into a chaotic nightmare where the lines of reality might fray beyond recognition. The night deepened, wrapping Willow Creek in a cloak of black that seemed to press against the windows of Karen's home. A chill swept through the living room, making the hair on her arms stand on end. She could hear the children's whispers from down the hall, their voices conspiratorial and laden with unspoken fears. Mia spoke of her friend again, giggling in a way that sent prickles of ice dancing along Karen's spine. "Mom?" Jake's voice trembled as it broke through the silence. "Can you come here please?" Karen's heart raced. She stood frozen, staring into the dark hallway that led to their rooms. The air was thick with the smell of unease, like a storm waiting to break. She fought against her fear and slowly made her way toward them. The faint glow of a night light illuminated their faces, but something felt wrong. Their little eyes shone too brightly, reflecting a strange light as if capturing something sinister from the shadows. "What is it, honey?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "She won't go away," Mia whimpered, her tiny fingers twisting the fabric of her pajama sleeves. "She's always watching us from the corner." "What do you mean?" Karen tried to mask her sinking stomach. "Who's watching?" "The shadow. She's really tall, Mom. And she talks to me at night," Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But she told me not to tell you that it would make you sad." A dread settled into Karen's bones, hardening her resolve. "You need to tell me everything, Mia. It's important." Before Mia could respond, the lights began to flicker overhead, casting jerky shadows against the walls. An unsettling laughter echoed through the room, rising from the corners, pulling at the edges of her sanity. Karen felt a wild rush of energy course through her body as she rushed toward the sound. "Go back to bed," she shouted, trying to quiet the chaos swelling inside her. Jake scrambled up, wide-eyed. "Mom! Look!" In one swift motion, he pointed to the darkened corner of the room where the light struggled to reach. In that fleeting moment, Karen thought she saw a figure tall and twisted, rising from the ground, barely illuminated but undeniably present. Her breath caught in her throat, a scream lodged there like a thorn. "No!" she gasped, stepping back, dragging her children closer. "No more games. Get to your rooms now." But the children stayed glued to her side, terror anchoring them in place. Karen felt herself slide into survival mode, adrenaline pounding in her veins like war drums. She needed to find a way to break whatever hold this entity had on her family. "Stay here, I'll be right back," she said, casting a final glance at the corner. The figure was gone, for now, but she could feel its presence lurking. She didn't know how she was going to confront it, but she couldn't let it consume her children. She darted into the kitchen, racing to grab her phone. The screen glowed, reflecting her frantic expression. As she fumbled to search for help, a number, a story, anything that could bring clarity, her reflection stared back at her, pale and haunted. Just as she hit search, the phone vibrated violently in her hand, as if responding to a cold laugh that only she could hear. The screen flickered wildly, distorting her reflection, and then darkness swallowed the light. Panic surged as she felt a chilling breath ripple through her, freezing her in place. "Mom! What's happening?" Jake's voice was panicked, and then, the shrill laugh erupted once more, echoing through the house, a sound so familiar, yet twisted like someone she knew, but turned sinister. The closer it got, the more she felt her sanity unraveling. A feeling of dread washed over her like a black tide. The barriers were breaking down. But just as she resolved to stand firm, the doorbell rang, shattering the oppressive silence. Who could it be at this late hour? Her heart pounded as she approached the door. Something told her it wouldn't be a friendly face on the other side. What horrible truth awaited her? With shaking hands, she grasped the knob. Was it a friend, or perhaps something far more sinister? The door creaked open, but the porch was empty. Just shadows danced across the floorboards, giving the illusion of life. Karen's heart thundered loudly in the silence, echoing like a war drum within her chest. She peered into the darkness beyond, searching for any sign, any glimmer of what could have knocked. "Mom!" Jake's voice trembled behind her. The safety of the living room felt galaxies away. "Stay close, both of you," she whispered, fearful of the unknown lurking beyond. She stepped outside, the cold air biting at her skin, and scanned the area. The streetlights flickered, their pale light failing to illuminate the encroaching shadows. Then she noticed a scrap of paper on the doormat, its edges crumpled. Hesitating, she bent down and picked it up. A chill crawled down her spine as she unfolded it. Written in messy handwriting was a single word: run. Mia, Jake. Back inside. Panic surged, driving her to grab each child and usher them through the threshold. She slammed the door shut and locked it, feeling a wave of false security wash over her. Mia, tell me everything about this friend of yours, she demanded, urgency spilling from her voice. She nodded, her small face pale. She told me, if I don't play with her, she'll take you away. Karen knelt, casting urgent glances at the windows as if the figure might materialize again. Take me where? What do you mean? Mia shook her head, tears forming in her eyes. I don't know. She just said it would be fun, but it feels wrong. Fun? Fun for who? Karen pressed, fear clawing at her gut. Jake's eyes darted around the room, scanning the corners. What if she comes in here, Mom? They can't. We're safe, here. But even as the words left her mouth, uncertainty began to gnaw at her. A low thumping echoed through the house, slow and steady like a heartbeat, emanating from the walls. What's that? Jake squeaked out, clutching Mia's hand as they huddled closer. Just the house settling, or the wind, Karen lied, trying to create a world where terror wouldn't breach their sanctuary. But deep down, she could feel the weight of something much darker pressing against the walls, as if it were listening. The children were silent, eyes wide, breaths shallow. The cell phone sat on the counter, forgotten in the rush, but as if sensing its moment, it buzzed again. Karen snatched it up, her heart racing. A message from an unknown number. She's closer than you think, don't let her in. The dread spiraled deeper, squeezing around her chest. Who is this? She typed furiously, but no reply came. Then another loud thud came from above, like footsteps pacing across the attic floor. Stay here. Don't move. She instructed firmly, her voice shaking despite her resolve. Karen gripped the staircase railing, her feet leading her upward against the instinct to flee. Each step creaked ominously beneath her weight. The attic door loomed above, cracked slightly open, teasing her with slivers of shadow that danced in the faint moonlight. Mom! Jake shouted from below, his voice faltering. Just wait. She turned back, but her heart sank when she heard the faint laughter, melodic yet menacing, echoed from the attic. The sound stopped her in her tracks, an icy grip wrapping around her throat. What the hell? She whispered to herself. And then, in that breathless moment, she realized the laughter wasn't coming from the attic. It was coming from right behind her, spinning around. She felt icy fingers brush against her neck, and her breath caught in her throat. What had she invited into their home? The atmosphere thrummed with ominous anticipation. Breathless, she turned, needing to confront the lurking shadow. But as she looked, there was nothing there. Just a lingering darkness. Could it really be gone? Or was it waiting for the perfect moment to strike? She felt it then, a rising panic choking her. She had to act. But what if the answer was hidden somewhere in that attic, waiting for her to discover it? With a deep breath, Karen forced herself to step back toward the staircase, the tingle of icy dread still prickling her skin. Her heart pounded with urgency, but she couldn't let fear paralyze her. She needed to get to the attic. Mia. Jake. She called down, her voice laced with trembling fierceness. You two stay by the couch, and whatever you hear, don't come up here, okay? I need you to trust me. As she ascended the last few steps, the sound of her heartbeat thudded in her ears, drowning out the creeping silence. The attic door loomed larger as she reached for the weathered handle, her palms slick with sweat. With a quick twist, she pulled it open, and the hinges groaned like a restless spirit. Darkness enveloped her. The dim glow from the hallway barely pierced the blackness, creating threatening silhouettes that danced and writhed across the walls. Karen inched forward, squinting as her eyes adjusted. Dust motes swirled in the weak light, making the air thick and stale, a forgotten air that reeked of long-lost secrets. Then came another thump, more pronounced this time, right above her head. Panic surged as she flipped the light switch, heart racing. Nothing happened. The bulb must have blown. "See Mon," she gasped, forcing herself onward. She could feel her pulse drumming in her throat now. She had to find out what was in here. She edged deeper into the attic, her footsteps barely making a sound, as if the very floorboards were holding their breath. Boxes and old furniture stood like sentinels in the dark, casting twisted shadows everywhere. She felt as if they were watching, judging. Shivers raced down her spine as she approached a large trunk, its leather cracked and peeling. "Please, please let there be something," she muttered, desperation clawing at her. She fumbled to open it, her hands trembling as she lifted the rusting latch. The trunk creaked open, revealing an array of dusty toys, faded photographs, and old clothes. Nothing that caught her eye. A gust of wind whooshed through the attic, sending a chill through her bones. She shivered, glancing back toward the attic door. Had the laughter carried on? Or was she imagining it? Just then, out of the corner of her eye, something shifted. A small, dark figure peeked out from behind a pile of boxes. She squinted, heart racing. "Is someone there?" she called, apprehension draping over her like a heavy blanket. Silence answered. Grabbing a nearby baseball bat she had spotted earlier, she stepped closer to the moving shadow. "I'm not scared of you," she shouted, trying to command her voice, though it trembled with fear. The figure slowly emerged into the light, and Karen's blood ran cold. It was a doll, with eyes so dark it felt like they were absorbing the light. Its painted smile seemed stretched, malicious in its stillness. Suddenly, the air grew thick, suffocating. Karen glanced back at the attic door, her grip tightening around the bat. It wouldn't stay shut. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was haunting them had found its way here too. Before she could consider her next move, a distant, echoing giggle sounded, ricocheting around the attic walls, sending icy fingers of terror racing down her spine. The laughter swelled, wrapping around her like tendrils of smoke. She spun around, bat raised, eyes wide with dread. "Mia! Jake!" she screamed, feeling the very essence of darkness creeping closer. Then, the laughter changed a childlike whimper followed by, "Why won't you play with me?" Karen's breath caught, her dear children still downstairs, oblivious. What had she unleashed? Moments gushed by, seconds felt like years as she fought the instinct to run. Then, without a sound, a cold wind whooshed through the attic, snuffing the remaining light and plunging her into darkness. Everything felt oppressive now, as if the shadows themselves were alive, hungry, and closing in. Had she truly invited darkness into their home? And was it too late for all of them? With mounting desperation, she sensed she needed to escape. But escape to where? Just then, a faint whisper curled around her ear. "Come play with me." For the first time, Karen felt true panic. She had to get to her children. But as she braced herself to run, she realized the attic door had slammed shut behind her. The laughter erupted again. Would she ever escape? Or would something much worse keep her there forever? Karen's heart raced as darkness enveloped her like an unyielding shroud. The sudden silence pressed against her, heavy and pregnant with dread. She couldn't see her hand in front of her face, but she could feel the chilling presence of whatever lurked in the corners of the attic. The oppressive air made her skin crawl as the echoes of childish laughter ricocheted off the walls, mocking her. Panic surged again. She had to break free. "Mia! Jake!" she screamed, her voice trembling as it fractured against the walls. She kicked the door, but it wouldn't budge. It felt as if something heavy was leaning against it, the very essence of her worst nightmares, trying to fight off the creeping despair. She swung the bat blindly in front of her, desperately willing it to connect with something. Anything. The rhythmic thumping of her heart screamed louder than her thoughts. With each passing second, the darkness seemed to sharpen, whispering promises of unspeakable horrors. "Mia! Jake!" She shouted again, panic lacing her voice, but only a hollow silence answered her call. Had they heard her? Were they safe? Or had the doll turned its sinister gaze upon them as well? The air turned frigid, it coiled around her throat, making it difficult to breathe. Another laugh erupted, deeper now, more sinister, a chorus of giggles, rising and falling like a haunting lullaby. "Come play with me," it taunted. The whisper wormed its way into her mind, breaking her resolve piece by piece, eyelids fluttering, she fought against the encroaching terror. Mustering her courage, Karen shouted, "I'm not afraid of you." But the truth was, she was terrified. Her grip on the bat tightened, knuckles widening as the shadows crept closer, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to reach out for her. Suddenly, the doll's eyes flickered in the dimness. In that instant, they weren't just empty voids, they seemed to pulse with an unholy life, hungry and watchful. A low hum enveloped her, the sound of whispers growing stronger. "Join us," they seemed to say, freedom slipping away with each breath. In instinctive survival, she turned to pound on the attic door again, her mind racing through scenarios. She had to get to her children. What if that laughter was leading them astray? Shadows danced as if mocking her frantic attempts. With each strike, a deep-seated fear clutched her heart, the whispers escalated into a cacophony, drowning her in their suffocating embrace. "Play with us, stay with us," they sang, each word slithering into her thoughts. Suddenly, the trunk she had opened earlier began to tremble as if something inside was alive, seeking release. Out of instinct, she backed away but tripped on a stray toy, crashing to the floor. The paralyzing fear surged, and for a moment, she could only stare at the trunk, teetering between her reality and the horror that threatened to consume her. Then came a resounding thud, echoing in the basement, not from her own movements but from below. "Mia! Jake!" She screamed again, barely able to contain the terror flooding her veins. Then it struck her, what if they were in danger? She couldn't stay here, she had to escape, find them. Her stillness was merely a mask of despair. With renewed determination, she staggered to her feet, breathing heavily. The laughter dimmed slightly and the shadows parted as if allowing her one last chance to break through. She lunged for the door, slamming her weight against it only to find it still unyielding. Then she saw them, flickering at the edges of her vision, shadowy forms racing across the attic floor. She blinked. There was more than just the doll. Ghostly figures emerged, their faces contorted in silent screams, their eyes reflectors of her own horror. "Help!" she yelled, gripping the bat tightly, her heart pounding loud enough to drown out even the whispers. A figure loomed closer, dark and amorphous. She charged toward it, but as she swung the bat, it went right through. The laughter erupted again, pure, unrestrained. "Come play with us," the walls trembled with an unholy resonance. Karen was losing her grasp on reality. But she still needed to fight, to escape. Then her phone buzzed in her pocket. In this madness, could there be hope? As her fingers trembled, reaching for her phone, the laughter stopped abruptly. Silence engulfed the attic, heavy and suffocating. What had happened? What if she wasn't alone after all, or was it a trap? She glanced back as she held her breath, phone barely lit, waiting for what would come next. The light from Karen's phone flickered against the oppressive darkness, creating a soft halo that pushed the shadows back for a heartbeat. Temporarily, the grotesque figures scattered like dust, retreating into the corners, but only for an instant. Holding her breath, she took a step towards the door, willing it to cooperate with her desperate wish to escape. "Mia! Jake!" Her voice cracked like glass, sending reverberations back at her. Was it too late? Did the darkness already have them? As her phone buzzed again, she yanked it out, heart leaping. The screen illuminated with a message, "Mom, help." It wasn't just her imagination, her children were in danger. A surge of adrenaline ignited in her veins. "I'm coming," she sobbed, directing her fear into strength. She turned back towards the locked door. Cold fingers coiling around her throat squeezed tighter, mixing suspense with dread. Before she could lunge again, the laughter returned deafening and mocking. "You're all alone, you can't escape, they're mine now, no. I want to let you take them," she shouted, her voice a fragile beacon against the suffocating gloom. With that, she raised the phone higher, guiding its light towards the trunk that had trembled before. It was centered in the room, the only tangible object amid the swirling chaos. Something inside it pulsated, as if it were alive, thrumming with a dark energy that gnawed at her resolve. Her breath hitched as she approached. What kind of monstrosities could be trapped inside? The air thickened, clinging to her skin as she indirectly felt a pull towards it, seductive and terrifying. What if it contained her children? She had no time to dwell on that possibility. The laughter escalated to a maddening chorus, and a vision of Mia and Jake, two small silhouettes, appeared before her, transparent, trapped within the depths of her own nightmares. Their faces twisted in fear, mouths moving silently as if they were pleading for aid. "Please," she begged the shadows. "Where are you? What do you want?" Silence fell once again, an eerie lull capturing the moment. For a split second, the doll's eyes seemed to shine brighter, almost inviting her to dive deeper into despair. Then, unpredictably, whispers turned into screams. "Open the trunk, Karen. Save us." It was no longer just playful taunts, behind the echoing shrieks were desperate calls, real, terrifying, and urgent. Her hands trembling as she reached towards the trunk's latch. It felt ridiculously warm beneath her fingers, almost as if it were breathing, pulsating, waiting for her decision. Could she risk it? Could she open the very thing that might lead her to salvation or doom? Torn between hope and terror, she closed her eyes and inhaled sharply. "Hold on, kids. I'm coming," she shouted, flicking the latch open. Momentarily, the world around her seemed to draw in a collective breath. What would emerge? The trunk creaked and groaned, the sound echoing through the attic, mixing with the laughter that returned with fervor, a wicked delight. As the lid began to rise, Karen's hands were frozen in place, terror clawing at her stomach. The air thickened again, suffocating her, but she had no choice but to peek inside, and then, a monstrous scream erupted from the trunk. Something dark and twisted began to lunge toward her, the attic lights flickered violently as she stumbled back, mind racing with the thought, what if this was just the beginning? The shadows flourished with renewed vigor, closing in around her. Would she ever see Mia and Jake again? As she stood at the precipice of dread, the laughter swelled around her, drowning out her hopes. The trunk opened fully. What had she unleashed? What was waiting beyond that threshold? The trunk lid swung wide, revealing an inky void, a blackness so thick it seemed to swallow the faint light from Karen's phone. A chill clawed its way up her spine, every instinct screaming at her to run, yet her feet felt fused to the floor. Anxiety gnawed at her, each heartbeat echoing in her ears, a drumroll heralding the horror about to unfurl. Something shifted within the darkness. A low growl reverberated, primal and distorted. No longer was it just an echo, it was a promise of suffering. Panic surged, and she fought against the dread weighing her down. "Stay away from my kids!" she screamed, the words ripping from her throat like jagged glass. The laughter transformed, deepening into a throaty cackle, dripping with malice. It danced on the edges of her sanity, twisting her fears into tangible nightmares, then silence. An oppressing hush suffocated the room. With every breath, she could feel the darkness clawing at the edges of her mind, her willpower teetering on the brink of despair. The trunk's contents were stirring, and for an agonizing moment, the world seemed to pause. Suddenly, a pair of glinting eyes broke through the blackness, shining like distant stars, baleful and malevolent. An arm extended, long and twisted, claw-like fingers reaching for her. "Mom, help! A familiar voice, unmistakable, but warped. It was Mia. Her heart lurched as she recognized her daughter's plea, but it wasn't right. The voice was layered with something sinister, a melody that mocked hope, laced with the darkness emanating from the trunk. "Don't trust it." A voice inside her screamed. Yet her instinct drove her closer. "Get back, Mia!" Karen shouted, shaking her head violently, as if she could dispel the cruel illusion. But the light from her phone flickered again, illuminating another figure beside the first Jake, his face just as frightened, but drained of color. They were trapped, twisted remnants of the children she knew, caught in a web spun from their mother's nightmares. The laughter, once a distant echo, returned with frankly wanted joy. "You're too late, Karen. They want to be free to join us." The shadows twisted and transformed, swirling menacingly, peeling away from the trunk to converge around her. "Let them go," she screeched, voice breaking under the weight of desperation, her soft beacon of light barely penetrating the overwhelming darkness. In desperation, she lunged toward the trunk, reaching for her children, but the air around her crackled with malevolence. The figures shifted, melding with the shadows, becoming serpents of despair, enticing but dangerous. "Mom!" Mia's voice came again, faint and trembling. "You have to save us. We can't breathe." A jolt of terror washed over Karen. Was this the end? Would she have to choose between her own life and her children? The laughter roared louder, drowning her resolve. "If you want them back, you'll have to pay the price," whispered the darkness, seductive and troubling. The shadows flickered around her, tantalizingly close yet impossibly far. Karen's heart raced, she needed to decide. But what could she sacrifice? A flash of clarity pierced through her terror. "No. I refuse to let you take them." The words erupted from her, raw and fierce. The laughter faded into a collective gasp, shocked into silence. Without thinking, she reached inside the trunk, fingers trembling as they brushed against something cold and damp. Whatever feelings of dread or panic had built were now like steam escaping a split pipe. And then the world exploded, the shadows shrieked, the light from her phone glowing intensely, illuminating the attic with fierce clarity. There was a burst, something rising, and before her stood a towering figure shrouded in darkness. "What have you done?" It hissed, voice a thunderclap. Karen's breath stuttered. She had crossed an unforgiving line. With dread flooding her veins, she realized there were worse things than darkness, waiting in that space between reality and nightmare. But as she braced for what would come next, the trunk slammed shut, plunging everything into a suffocating silence. What had she unleashed? And would it ever be contained again? The silence felt alive, pulsating as shadows clung to the corners of the attic, shifting and writhing like a pack of hungry vipers. Karen's heart thundered in her chest, a frantic reminder of her own mortality. What had she unleashed? The heavy trunk loomed before her, innocuous now but a vessel of terror just moments ago. Her breath came in short gasps, the air thick and stale. It pressed against her like a weighted blanket, causing her to stagger back. She needed to think, to understand what had just happened. Uncertainty gnawed at her mind, unraveling her grip on reality. A shudder ran through the floorboards beneath her, almost like a warning. She peered at the trunk, its handle seeming to pulsate now, responding to her dread. The laughter she had heard echoed from somewhere deep within her, a wicked reminder that this darkness was not just about her kids, it was about her, too. "Mom," that voice again, it pierced through the stillness, desperate and thin. There was no mistaking it. It was Mia, but twisted, tainted. The fear in it made her skin chill. "Help us shut up," she shouted, the words bursting forth, desperate and furious. She wanted to silence it, to drown it out, to not hear that plea morphing into a siren's song tugging at the edges of her heart. A wave of anger surged through her. This was not her daughter's voice. She would not let the shadows manipulate her, wouldn't let them toy with her fears, but who was she kidding? The very ground beneath her feet felt fragile, ready to crumble. She turned her back to the trunk, desperate to escape the clutches of the haunting cries. Yet something tugged at her, an insatiable thirst for understanding. What had she awakened? The attic felt colder, and a gust of wind sent a chill through her bones, as if the air itself was speaking, warning her, chiding her for not understanding the ancient rules that governed this dark space. Shapes flickered at the edges of her vision, dark silhouettes whispering secrets she could barely comprehend. "Leave!" she yelled into the darkness, channeling all the fierceness she had left. "Leave my family alone." In response, the shadows convulsed, laughter bubbling up and out, more sinister than ever. It wrapped around her like chains, holding her in place. In that haze of fear and fury, she saw it, a dark form at the edge of the attic, watching, waiting. The eyes glinted with a malevolence that made her stomach churn. "What do you want?" she gasped, voice quaking. "Your light," it hissed back, a tongue of darkness flicking out between its serrated teeth. "To bring them to me, to take your place within the abyss." Karen's mind raced. Her children, what had they become? Were they truly lost to whatever dark force ruled this space? Would she willingly succumb to despair, to join their cries? Suddenly, the trunk shuddered again, eerily alive, and the cackling laughter morphed into a groan of biting regret. "Mom, please!" she stumbled back as dread clawed at her, ready to strip her of resolve. Fear wrapped around her heart. But within that fear, anger began to rise again, fighting against the shadows and the lies. She was their mother. She would not falter to terror. With newfound resolve, she took a step toward that looming darkness, heart racing but hands steady, ready to confront whatever awaited. What price would she have to pay? A chilling thought invaded her mind. If she battled this evil, could it swallow her whole? The attic shuddered, and the wicked laughter returned, now laced with triumph. What fresh hell awaited her as she stepped deeper into the void? Did she have the strength to face the shadows, or were they destined to entwine around her soul forever? The weight of her decision loomed heavy. She must act, and swiftly. But time was not on her side. The shadows whispered louder now, an unholy chorus that wrapped around Karen, drowning her in darkness. The air crackled with a tension that made her skin ripple with unease. Stillness was no sanctuary. The trunk throbbed like a living thing, urging her onward into its cold embrace. "Mia," she cried, her voice trembling. "Jimmy." The echoes of their names hung in the air, tainted by despair. She forced herself to approach the trunk again, each step like wading through treacle. The lid was slightly ajar, a gaping mouth waiting to be fed. Suddenly, the room was flooded with the horrifying whispers of children, hundreds of tiny voices blending, rising like a chaotic tide. "Mommy!" they wept. "Help us!" It clawed at her spirit, a collective yearning for salvation. But they were not her children. Not anymore. What had been unleashed lingered, its malevolent presence savoring her agony, and then, she heard it again, the twisted impersonation of Mia. "Mom, please!" We're scared. Something snapped inside her. This was a trap, a net woven by despair. Clenching her fists, she shouted, "You're not my kids. You're not real." The laughter surged, a wave crashing over her. "But they are, trapped and vulnerable, just like you," it mocked, carrying the weight of 100 children's regrets. The sight before her changed suddenly. The attic walls rippled, revealing the flickering silhouettes of her once happy children, faces frozen in terror. A heart-wrenching tableau of her worst fears came alive, their small bodies writhing in darkness, reaching for her with faces that blurred into the shadows. She reeled back, a deep pit of terror opening up beneath her. Karen's stomach churned violently. What had she pulled from the depths of this cursed trunk? Just how far gone were Mia and Jimmy? "Step closer," the shadows cooed, their voices dripping like honey and poison. "Join them, join us!" A flash of anger burned through her, igniting a fury she didn't know she possessed. "I want. You can't have my family." With every ounce of will, she leaned toward the trunk, drawn to the pulsing handle. The moment her fingers grazed it, a searing pain shot through her hand. Images raced in her mind, memories of laughter, pie-eating contests, bedtime stories. They were vibrant against the grayness threatening to swallow them whole. A spark of hope flickered. Enough! She shouted, the sound echoing off the rafters. You will not keep them here. The darkness shuddered, recoiling from her defiance. Then a shadow lunged at her, a darkness, more like a storm than a creature, shrieking with rage. It enveloped her, making her gasp for breath, freezing her bones as icy fingers traced her spine. Panic exploded. A wrenching cry tore from her throat, but just as it escaped, she felt a warmth familiar, loving. It centered on her heart, urging her to fight. I am their mother, she whispered fiercely, and I will bring them back. The trunk thrashed wildly, a wounded beast desperate to reclaim its prey. A blinding light erupted from the handle, illuminating the space with a fierce glow. Shadows shrieked, twisting and turning like tortured souls. Karen fought against the tide as it pulled at her feet, her breath hitching and the world around her fracturing like glass. Had she called forth something she couldn't contain? Suddenly, she saw them, Mia and Jimmy, entwined in the darkness, trapped but still fighting. Their glowing eyes met hers, and she felt a surge of relentless love. Mom! They cried, reaching through the abyss, and in that moment, Karen knew what she had to do. But would she risk everything to pull her children back from the brink, or would she become just another shadow, lost to the darkness forever? Time was slipping away. The trunk pulsated violently, a countdown ticking in the darkness. What awaited her if she failed? As the shadows began to tighten their grip around her soul, the darkness crackled with a familiar noise. A guttural laughter echoed, twisting the very fabric of her reality. This was not over. Not yet. Karen tensed, ready for the fight of her life. But what if this was a fight she couldn't win? Karen braced herself, heart pounding like a wild drum. The shadows loomed, twisting and writhing, a tempest of darkness threatening to consume her whole. She took a deep breath, summoning every ounce of courage she had left. This ends now, she shouted, her voice ringing true and full of defiance. With purpose, she strode toward the trunk, the source of all this horror. The shadows screamed, clawing at her, pulling her back as if sensing her resolve. But she couldn't turn away now. Not when Mia and Jake were just within reach, their faces etched with terror and longing for their mother. Stay with me, she cried, her voice slicing through the chaos, desperately clawing toward the light. You are my children. Mia and Jake's faces flickered through the murky darkness, tangible yet frustratingly far away. Mom, it hurts. Mia sobbed, pulling against an invisible force that anchored her to the shadows. Jake's eyes darted back and forth, half pleading, half terrified. I'll get you back, Karen screamed, determination fueling her. Leaving her fear behind, she lunged for the trunk, her fingers wrapping around the handle like a lifeline. Fire coursed through her veins as she pulled, the lid slammed shut with a deafening roar. In that moment, something shifted. The dark figures recoiled, the laughter morphed into wails of agony. Karen's heart raced faster. She felt the warmth of their love wrapping around her, fortifying her. Enough! She shouted again, voice breaking through the tumult. Release my children. A brilliant light erupted from the trunk, flooding the attic. It filled the space where shadows once held dominion, penetrating every corner, revealing the truth within. The figures were not just figments of her imagination, they were lost souls, trapped in torment, their hollow cries mixing with Mia and Jake's. Karen was no longer afraid. I want to let you take them. They belong to the light, she declared fiercely. The force of her words sent ripples through the shadows, dispersing tendrils of darkness as she pushed toward the trunk again. The chaotic energy pulsed, threatening to rip the world apart. She felt their pain, their fear, but under it all was the love that connected them. I'm coming, she cried, summoning every ounce of willpower. With every emotion, every memory of laughter, hugs, and bedtime stories, she surged against the shadows with an unyielding intensity. The trunk quaked violently, with shadows swirling like tornadoes desperate to snatch at her ankle. Like a tidal wave, it pushed back through sheer force of will, holding them at bay. And just as she felt they were on the verge of slipping away, she tore the lid open again, light exploded from within, brightening everything. The darkness writhed and shrieked, unraveling like threads unspooled from an ancient tapestry. It thrashed against the release of being that hungered for despair, drowning in white-hot light. Next, she saw Mia and Jake breaking free from the dark prison, a burst of energy radiating from within them, illuminating their faces, making them shine. "Mom!" they cried, voices ringing like bells in the night, bringing light where there once was none. "Grab my hand!" she yelled, reaching out. The warmth enveloped her fingers, pulling harder. With a shared gasp, the shadows splintered, retreating into sharp cracks as laughter dissolved into terrified screams. In an instant, she felt the thrilling rush of connection, bodies colliding as Mia and Jake bounded into her arms, the warmth washing over them like a glorious sunrise. But it wasn't over yet. They tumbled backward as the remnants of shadows whirled violently, spiraling around them like a mad whirlwind. "We have to destroy it," Mia cried, her young face grave with understanding, and before she could feel hesitation, Karen nodded. "Yes. Together." In that moment, they found resolve. Standing firm, they faced the chaos, hearts beating as one. They joined hands, their righteousness piercing through everything dark, fragile boundaries boldening, challenging the evil that threatened their unity. "Let there be light," they declared, the power of their bond driving back the shadows, making the darkness retreat. The world trembled, but their light flourished, washing over everything like the dawn breaking through night. As the voices retreated, shadows dissipated into the ether, the echoes fading into whispers of forgotten fears. And just like that, the attic was still, heavy comfort settling around them. They stood, intertwined in that moment, knowing the darkness had been vanquished. A relieved grin spread across Mia's face, and Jake's eyes sparkled with unshed tears of joy. "You saved us, Mom," he whispered, full of recognition, the weight of terror no longer clouding their hearts. Karen hugged them tighter, her heart swelling with love, an unbeatable force. They would rebuild. Willow Creek had sent its horrors, yet their bond remained unbreakable, stronger than the deepest fear. They stepped into the light, a family united, ready to face whatever came next with heart and courage, and as they left the attic behind, Karen knew they would cherish their ordinary lives, a haunting reminder of just how far they had come. Life was precious, fragile, and every moment should be embraced. "Hey," she called back, catching the glimmers of warmth that lingered in the shadows, "we won't forget you." With those words, they walked into the new dawn, embracing the future, brave against the dark and ready to live. And if you thought this end was the final chapter, let me tell you, there's always more lurking beneath the surface. So don't wait. You need to subscribe immediately to catch every spine-chilling story before it slips away from you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and bring more terrifying tales to life. And flood that comments section with all of your reactions and theories. What do you think waits in the shadows next? This is the moment to show your support. Let your friends in on the action. Instantly share this video with at least 5 people who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to send the chills racing.